Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the Paideiac Self podcast. I'm your host Ken, and today I want to share some thoughts that I have about the idea of forming a legacy of some kind. As it's an idea that I've been thinking about lately, as growing up, this idea of a legacy has been frequently and commonly brought up from my friends, family, other people in society, or even just a mix of any of them combined. As I find that the idea of a legacy, it speaks to some innate desire to be remembered for our actions and knowing that they have made an impact on the world around them and the people in it. A way to be immortal in some sense, even after we're gone physically from this world or even an aspect of it. Whether it's through trophies, history books documenting our every move and our values and life story, and the list goes on, as there are many different ways to immortalize someone beyond just these physical objects. And so, I find that as I get older, I sometimes find myself questioning the merit of having a legacy of my own, and or whether or not it actually matters in this whole grand scheme of things. Before I start diving into this idea of having a legacy, let's start by just exploring from based on what I understand, going into what would happen if we don't actively cultivate one, especially when it comes to what gradually gets lost over time. As an example, think of when you say graduate from college. At the moment in which you graduate from college, you're given a brief moment to celebrate your achievements and all the hard work and support along the way that got you to be at this point in your life. The professors you met, the students you connected with, the organizations you joined, and all the hours that you spent toiling away at textbooks and extracurricular activities in order to have an enriching experience in college. All of these things, all these aspects of the college experience is immortalized through these diplomas and certificates and so on that you get at the end of your academic journey. However, what people gotta realize is that once you do get that moment to bask in the glory of your work and personal growth and what you've gained from the college experience, the moment you graduate from college is the moment that the college starts to lose your physical presence there. As believe it or not, what you got to know is that your physical presence on campus is a form of remembering who you are. As your body and who you are, whether it's identity or something like that, is the source of all your actions and thoughts you choose to express out there in the world. It's the source of all your original thoughts, ideas, and actions that all work in some way in this messy but intricately beautiful and interfabric binding that really governs our world, all of which just connects what you're doing and saying in the sea of ideas and actions with others who are also doing the same, and all forming this coherent whole, this melting pot of people, cultures, and ideas. As after all, who else could be you but you? You're the original. So once you leave campus, the campus experiences this loss of you in the physical sense. As even if you decide to go back onto campus, maybe as an alumni or something along those lines, at some point, you'll eventually find a time where you'll be on campus for the last time until you no longer return on campus anymore. From there begins the loss of a physical memory of you, as well as a piece of living history built in your very existence. To take some ideas from a quote by former President Abraham Lincoln, the idea is that a beautiful part of history, as you would put it, is that you can find a living piece of history in every person who lived through specific events in time. It's one thing to read about them in a book, but it's another to hear it from a person who actually lived through it. As you may know what happened, but you may not know exactly how it feels to live through those times, or what went into the decision-making and growth of, say, a movement or something at the time. A lot of which you can only get by talking and listening to those that actually lived through it. The emotions, the pain, what they saw, what they felt, how they responded to it, what do they think of it. This diversity of how each and every person that lived through it experienced it and reacted to it, all of which just helps to make each of us unique. All these memories and whatnot contained within our mind, and by and large, this physical body we each have. So without any effort to preserve our experiences of some kind, to paraphrase ideas from Lincoln, time will eventually whittle away at our physical presence, and thus a physical memory of history itself gets slowly eroded, like an artillery cannon slowly breaking down the walls of a castle. Now at this point, you're probably thinking, what if we each decide to write diaries and books and social media posts, or film ourselves, make artwork with our names on it, do interviews, or record aspects of ourselves some way or another? What if we do those things? Yeah, sure. Though that's another way to look at it, as those things do at least prolong your legacy in some way, as even if you're physically gone from a place, whatever you create and leave behind does preserve some fragment of our history and our contributions to society. Say, for example, I take a picture of myself and I post it on the internet. Even if something happens to me where I'm no longer on the internet anymore, that picture in some way preserves me, who I am and what I look like in some way or form. Some people may not understand it, but in a sense, captures a piece of me and puts it out there. So in a way, I'm alive through these pictures. So that's just one example. But as cool as these things sound, it all relies on one thing that only is required to be met in order for this thing to work. And that is, in order for us to live through these physical things or things we create or contribute towards, in order for things to be preserved so that we can be sort of alive in some way, you have to have people out there to continuously discuss, interpret, and preserve these fragments of our individual history and essence. As without doing anything to preserve these things, not only is our physical presence being lost, and thus any physical record of history in itself, you also experience the second form of loss, and that is that the last person to remember or say your name for the last time, after that person's gone, you're gone in a social sense. That way. As think of it this way. When you say someone's name, there's a sense of acknowledgement or this feeling of being seen that gets awakened in you, as names are a source of identity. They identify you individually and put a label to who you are along with everything in it. Your hobbies, your history, all that stuff. Say, when I think of a friend, let's call this hypothetical person Jeremy. I'm not just thinking of Jeremy, I'm also thinking about any memories we've had together, the times we went out to eat together, hug each other, celebrate each other, make things together, or give gifts to each other, as well as anything I can attribute to him. His face, his looks, his clothes, where he lives, what art or work he did, and all these unique combinations of things that make him who he is on a unique level. Or even just anything I learned from him that helped me be more informed or just grow as a person. Could even that he likes the color green, or I learned about how to make an egg omelet, or just learn how to be a better person some way through him. All these things, and the unique combinations of these things, are all brought up when I think of the name Jeremy. As how cool is that, when even a name can hold so much value and history within it? As even if Jeremy is no longer in my life whatsoever, or for whatever reason, I still hold a piece of him in me through the fact that my mind holds a memory of who he is, and so many aspects of his life and identity. As even if Jeremy's out of my life, when I think of Jeremy, I think of those memories we spent time together and all that. And so while he may be gone physically, he's still alive through the fact that I have memories of him in my brain. And I could choose to do something with it, maybe write down a story about Jeremy on a piece of paper and publish it as a book or something. And then people read it, and then he becomes alive even more beyond that, because not only am I having in my head, but I'm taking this ideas and putting it out there physically, and then now people are reading about them. And even if they don't like Jeremy, they still remember him, as once you see something, you can't really unsee it. So in a way, he's alive in that sense, even when he's not physically there. However, as I've probably alluded to before, unless there are other people to remember Jeremy, whether it's just me or other people, to continue preserving his memory in some way, Jeremy's legacy would eventually disappear with us once we're out of the picture. I know a lot of these ideas I'm talking about seem a little bit dreary to think about, but the idea I'm trying to convey here is essentially what is necessary to remember someone isn't just from their physical presence alone, but the people around them and the physical traces of them, as well as their thoughts and actions that are recorded in some way or another, or help to sort of make movements or in the fabric of the environment or history itself, things like that exist. So if you want to think about what gets lost when you leave a place without any effort whatsoever to preserve your presence or history, what first gets lost is your physical presence, and then all the people and physical things, memories of you through video recordings, paintings, anything you create, all that anything just preserves your essence or memory of you in some way. All those things just kind of just whittle away and kind of erode the idea of having some legacy or memory of you. So now that I have these ideas, I do want to go back to what I was talking about earlier, what I was thinking about earlier, about just the idea of having my own legacy, now that you all have heard my ideas on it. So going back to that, I do kind of wonder whether it really matters at all to have one. As, yes, personally, I do want to preserve myself in some way, especially through the things I've done in the past or contributed towards. As I feel that maybe some of those things might be of great value to other people around me. Certainly, I'm obviously not in control of what people do with me or parts of me in my life, but deep down, I do see some merit in preserving things, especially, say, the work that I've done to co-found a club at my school that's helping to build community, the work I did to, say, maybe better community or contribute towards some kind of progress in that community, things along those lines. I think those things are, I guess, deserve some preservation in itself. As to me, I find that in terms of ensuring change in the world, the only way for that to happen is to have some record of history that we can use to inform ourselves and learn from so we can continue to progress and do better in the future. As how can you really have progress or just even continue building a better world when you have no memory of the past? Or at least what went wrong or what went right, so that way you can actually learn from it and use it to maybe make a better decision and get us closer to whatever goal you're trying to reach. And that takes me into part of why I wanted to start this podcast in the first place. And part of that reason is that I want to record my own life experiences and use them to reflect on certain aspects of the human experience, whether it's friendship, love, heartbreak, whatever I find along the way. As even with how much time I've spent on this earth, or just living, or just how long I've been living. I mean, I'm currently 25 right now. I'm turning 26 soon. But even then, I still have a lot to learn. And I hope that by recording my thoughts here on this podcast, I do hope that I get something that I can refer back to just to check on my progress and my growth, as well as give some ideas and perhaps maybe offer different perspectives and ideas to someone who may be going through the same things that I'm going through, or even those looking to understand the world from a different perspective. Yes, definitely, not everyone's going to agree with me or connect with my thoughts or change their mind right away, but at least I hope that my thoughts prove to be meaningful to those out there listening in some shape or form. So my general rule of thumb is take what you can, or whatever speaks to you, and pick and choose how you want to respond or take in those ideas I'm expressing here on this podcast. So, anyway, so while the idea of a legacy does seem valuable from that standpoint, at the same time, I also don't feel too concerned with preserving my legacy of my own. As for starters, I don't quite have much value in, say, expecting people to make statues of me to put all over a certain place. It's a bit too much for me, and realistically, even a statue can fade away too, to the point where someone may look at it and say, who is this guy? What is this? What does this mean? As while a statue may still stand there, the social value has kind of whittled away to the point where it has no meaning to someone else who may not be familiar with it. And plus, I personally don't want to force people to remember me. They can if they want to, but that's all out of my hands, to be honest. As at the end of the day, I believe that nothing lasts forever. Not even my time in college, the shirt I'm wearing, or anything else out there. It's something I want to be realistic about, as what else is going to happen after I leave a place or world? I wouldn't be able to control anything that happens after that, even to the best of my ability, with the time and energy I have to maybe advise people on how to deal with this legacy I may be having or cultivating, whether it's actively done by me or not. So, given what I've brought up so far, I'm kind of wondering, what does it mean to have a legacy of some kind? How much does it actually matter to have one or actively preserve one? As on one hand, I do value some kind of preservation, not a forced one, but a natural one, especially to continue anything that I do that might mean something to someone. But on the other, I also want to focus on living well and staying in the moment with the people I care about and the world around me. I don't want to be so obsessed with building a legacy that I say force people to remember me, or say erect statues of me in a neighborhood that people have to worship, or maybe some people distort aspects of my life or something for personal benefit and all that stuff. As all that material stuff to me just doesn't connect at all to what I value in my life. As I'm more about the actions and the community I build with others, my relationships, my actions, getting to know people around me, as opposed to actively wanting to be noticed or getting attention. It's a challenging thing, a really delicate thing that I'm trying to balance or trying to understand, and I imagine is not going to be resolved anytime soon. So it's something that, while I may be trying to figure out, I do hope to hear your thoughts on this, because I love to hear them and perhaps maybe get some perspective on this. So what do you guys think about legacy? Feel to share your thoughts and comments down below on YouTube, or message me on Instagram, or even wherever you get your podcast and all that, because I think some apps have a messaging feature where you can send messages to the podcast host or just the podcast itself. So love to hear thoughts, and hopefully we can all learn something. So, and on that note, I want to say thank you all for listening. If you all like this podcast and want to follow more from me, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, which is now Spotify for podcasters, or wherever you get your podcasts. For social media, you can follow me at thepaideiac self, which is spelled ThepaideiacSelf. The Paideiac Self. And then, if you want to get a convenient place to access all these links, you can also check out the link tree in my bio, or in the podcast description, or in my bio on Instagram. Either place is fine, where you can get access to where you can find out where my podcast is available, as well as a link to my Instagram channel, and lastly, where you can find my writings on medium.com. I know that I haven't been posting any writings lately because I'm just really busy right now at the moment, but I do hope at some point in the future I will, and post these writings, or just have some writings available for y'all to read, which I intend to be a little bit shorter than these podcasts. Hopefully I expect them to be maybe a 5-minute read or so. In general, just a way to expand on the ideas I bring up this podcast, or even just have transcriptions of my podcast or something. I'm still trying to figure that out, but hopefully you all stay tuned to that, as I will let you know when these writings are available. So on that note, thank you all for listening, and hope you all stay tuned for the next podcast, which I'm planning to release sometime in, let me check my calendar, August 12th, which is a Saturday, and it's released at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So, ready to check out the next episode? Stay tuned for that on Saturday, August 12th, 2023 at 12 p.m. Thank you, and have a good day.